to you, and we can get this sports officials committee meeting started.
Okay. Kelsey, we're good to go. If you want to go ahead and start the live stream.
Okay, we are live, and just to make a correction, it's *6 to unmute on the phone. Sorry about that.
Hey,
And we can get this sports officials committee meeting started.
Kelsey, we're good.
We're ready to go. Thank you.
Okay, will the members of the UIL Sports Officials Committee please come to order? This meeting of the University Interscholastic League Sports Officials Committee is now in official session. I am Brian Davis, the chair of this committee. For the record, it is approximately 9:03 a.m. on Monday, April the 19th, 2021. In accordance with the waiver to certain provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act, issued by Governor Greg Abbott on March the 16th, 2020, and in the interest of avoiding large gatherings and promoting social distancing during this COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held via teleconference and is streaming live. Please be aware that minutes are being taken. Committee members, I will now do a roll call. Please respond if you are here. Bobby Cruz.
Present.
Randy Davis.
Here.
Joel Hilliard.
Here.
Eddie Hopkins.
Here.
Teresa McAllister.
Here.
Kyle McNeely.
Here.
Russ Reeves.
Here.
Andre Walker.
Here.
At this time, I certify that a quorum of the Sports Officials Committee is present. Also, at this time, I'd like for the UIL staff to introduce yourself. Dr. Elsa, we'll start with you.
Susan Elza, UIL staff.
Jamie Harrison, UIL.
Dylan Bankston, UIL.
Elsie Wycliffe, UIL staff.
Okay, thank you. Also at this time, I'd like to welcome the newest member of our committee, Joel Hilliard. Joel, if you'll inform everyone of your affiliation, I believe you're with TASO.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Appreciate being asked to be on this committee. I wish it wasn't under the circumstances, as I am replacing our past president, John Miller, and we surely do miss him.
Are you with the football division?
Yes, sir. I'm the vice president of TASO football, and I've been officiating for start my 28th season this year, and I'm out of the South Texas region, actually out of Corpus Christi.
Okay, well, welcome, Joel. And at this time, if it pleases the committee, I would like to take just a brief moment of silence in remembrance of John. We lost John this past year, so if you'll join me in a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Unless there is an objection from committee members, the agenda for the business meeting and hearings will be as set out in our agenda, unless something otherwise is announced by myself. Any objection? Hearing no objection, the agenda is officially adopted. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the 2020-2021 UIL Constitution and Contest Rules. Turning to the minutes of the previous meeting held by this committee, you should have a copy of the minutes from the September 22nd, 2020 meeting. I'll give you a minute to look those over if you haven't already, and then I'll ask for a motion. Any discussion on the previous meeting minutes?
I make a motion to adopt the meetings as written.
Okay, we have a motion from Russ Reeves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Kyle McNeely. All in favor? Now, if you remember of the voting, when we call for a vote, if you're connected on your computer, you'll click on the participants, which will give you a list of participants on the right side of your screen. And that participants button is down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And when all the participants appear at the bottom of the participant list, you should see options to click on yes or no. Committee members who have called in, you will enter *9 if you would like to vote yes, but I think we're all on computer, so you should be able to vote down there at the bottom, either yes or no. All right, at this time, if you'll vote on the motion to accept the minutes.
Trying to find that button, but I vote yes.
Well, if you look at the bottom of your screen, it says participants. If you
Okay.
click on it, then it'll show the participants on the right-hand side.
Yep.
And then at the bottom of that list of participants, you should see some icons to either vote yes or no.
I usually do. I don't for some reason.
Yeah.
Let
I
me-
think it's going to be under reactions. You have to hit that.
I'm getting the same thing.
Under
Oh, I see.
reactions.
Yeah, it's under reaction.
Under reactions, there you go.
Yes. Good catch, Eddie. It is
Thanks,
under.
Eddie.
Okay, Mr. Chair, the vote is unanimous in favor.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal has passed with all, the majority, I'm sorry, with unanimous vote. And the UI staff will clear the vote after I announce the results of each motion. Okay, we'll now go to our public hearing. At this time, the chair recognizes Mike Finch of the Texas Association of Sports Officials. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee, for allowing me to speak to you this morning. Certainly always a pleasure to see everybody, and hopefully next time we can all look at each other in the eye and shake hands. That's kind of what we're all hoping for. As you have noticed, we have got 6 proposals that TASO has presented. We will, I know, address each of those individually, so I will wait to that time to make comments on each one. Also, this committee, as well as the UIL Athletic Committee of the Ledge Council, asked us to come up with a process and a procedure for future fee increases for officials. And we will cover that under one of our proposals also. The last little comment I'd like to make this morning, it wasn't really clear on the agenda, but just want to make sure everybody is aware. The change in the center point for all the El Paso chapters was made by school. It was not made by any officiating chapter in any organizations. So just wanted to make that clear. With that, Mr. Chair, I will give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mike. At this time, the chair recognizes C.J. Jones, former treasurer of the Dallas basketball chapter. Mrs. Jones, you'll have 5 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this morning. I greatly appreciate it. Dr. Susan Elza, Chairman Brian Davis, and the members of the Sports Officiating Committee. I know your time is valuable, and I do appreciate the opportunity to speak. I come before you today to ask that the Sports Officiating Committee, authorized under the UIL Constitution, Section 32, to enact a thorough and in-depth investigation and hearings into the numerous ethical and criminal offenses committed by the Dallas Basketball Officials Association Board of Directors and its governing association, Texas High School Basketball Officials Association. Due to the allotted time given today, the 5-minute reference, I'm presenting to the committee an abridged list of offenses but I respectfully ask that it be noted for the record that the number of offenses is not limited to those presented today. DBOA, as led by its executive board, violated UIL's constitution by failing to ensure all officials had been certified through proper membership registration, mandated testing, UIL required background checks, thereby allowing a high-level sex offender to officiate, as well as allowing officials who had not taken UIL testing to officiate varsity contests. Directors of the executive board, as well as general members, committed financial misconduct, including federal level theft, tax evasion, the filing of fraudulent tax returns, misappropriation of both membership and client ISD funds. Directors of the executive board failed to follow UIL's policy for proper scratches of officials, as well as the assignment of officials to ensure fairness for the smaller school districts and private schools DBOA serves. Directors of the executive board intentionally conducted ethics violations and impeachments improperly, as well as deliberately neglected to enforce probations and suspensions unanimously voted upon. Directors of the executive board provided false statements to police authority. Unfortunately, their blatant, self-serving actions not only violated DBOA's and THSBOA's bylaws, but more importantly, they breached their fiduciary responsibility of duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience, and duty of good faith as mandated by the laws of state of Texas for all nonprofit corporations' board of directors. After numerous attempts to adjudicate these matters internally, members of the executive board seeking to redress these grave violations in the best interest of the organization, DBO's general membership, the school districts, and UIL for which we are elected to serve, brought forth this information to the THSBOA executive board as sanctioned and advocated by the bylaws. Upon being made aware of these criminal offenses and ethical violations, THSBOA undeniably failed to perform any investigation, failed to initiate any actions to correct the matters, failed to impart any actions to thwart these issues from reoccurring, and improperly and illegally forced the removal of DBOA board members without any allegations, violations, charges, or indictments of any chapter bylaws, association bylaws, or the UIL Constitution. The UIL Constitution requires that each chapter and/or association have and follow a policy and procedure for the membership and certification of sports officials. The DBOA president at the time, John Fullylove, assignment secretary John Wilkins, and THSBOA representative Steve Mencken willfully ignored repeated communication from myself and DBOA secretary Gary Upshaw regarding members that had either not paid their registration dues with the chapter or the state association, had not completed the required UIL certification testing. Several officials who had not completed the registration process officiated not only sub-varsity, but varsity and post-regular season contests. This was a direct violation of the DBOA bylaws, THSBOA bylaws, and assuredly the UIL Constitution. Additionally, by failing to ensure a complete membership process was followed, all persons who officiated UIL contests through DBOA were not subject to a criminal background check. As a result, a high-level registered sex offender charged with sexual misconduct against minors was allowed to officiate in DBOA for UIL contests. This negligence of duty posed imminent jeopardy to the health and well-being of the students in the numerous school districts and private schools that DBOA is responsible for serving and protecting to the best of its abilities. This negligence of duty did not occur for just one season, but has been a systemic failure for years under the past leadership of Fred Knight, John Fullylove, and Treasurer Nicole Walker. The DBOA bylaws require that a financial audit be conducted annually. Additionally, Section 22 of the Texas Business Organization Code requires a nonprofit corporation, as DBOA is registered in the state of Texas, to maintain financial records in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and requires the board of directors to prepare and or approve an annual financial report for the preceding year. The DBOA board of directors, specifically President Ron Jones, past President Fred Knight, past President Ron Jones, Treasurer Nicole Walker, and President John Fullylove failed to uphold this fiduciary responsibility for several years. After numerous inquiries by general members of DBOA and a few select board of directors, the board of directors finally initiated a financial audit. A formal request for the assistance of DBOA members with accounting and financial audit experience was made. An audit committee was convened of qualified members, including myself, a certified accountant for over 20 years of experience. After nearly 9 months, due to the lack of timely cooperation by the then Treasurer Nicole Walker to supply the requested and necessary financial documents. An extensive and thorough audit was conducted on the information finally received. An adverse audit result was a report to the board of directors at that time. Several findings including, but not limited to, receipt of funds from our schools and school districts for preseason events that were the financial property of DBOA, collected by DBOA Vice President John Fullylove or Treasurer Nicole Walker, but never deposited into DBOA's business banking accounts. Numerous ATM withdrawals by President Ron Jones from the DBOA business account that have no documented or approved DBOA expense on record to account for the withdrawal of cash. Numerous financial transactions via check or debit card by Treasurer Nicole Walker that have no documented approval or expense on record. Numerous cash payments and check reimbursements by Treasurer Nicole Walker to member Lawrence Daniels for expenses with no documented or approved expense on record. No tangible inventory for the expense payment, and several expense reports submitted by Lawrence Daniel for reimbursement that were in direct conflict with the DBOA bank statements.
Ms. Jones,
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to let you know you've got 30 seconds left.
I do, thank you for that, sir. Let me close, I guess, in wrapping up. I had a little bit more to state, but I will state that as an 8-year veteran, or I shouldn't say veteran, but an 8-year official, Gary, 30 plus years, Cynthia, 4 years, and Billy White, 30 plus years. We do not find any happiness in having to report this about a chapter that we love and have honored and respected for all the time that we have been involved. But we do find it important for the best interest of all the members that we serve and the school districts that we serve to report the atrocities that were taking place. We are kindly asking and respectfully imploring the committee to please do investigate and hold hearings to right the wrongs that have been done against the chapter and against those who have simply tried to inform and correct these matters. We don't want another situation as has taken place in the Kaufman chapter with continuing to have sexual offenses committed against our children, nor continual theft for funds that should be going back into the chapter to ensure education and training for our members.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
My understanding that the Dallas basketball chapter is affiliated with Texas High School Basketball Officials Association. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It is a chapter under the THSBOA Association.
I'm going to ask for some input here from Dr. Elsa and/or Dr. Harrison.
And Mr. Allen, David Allen is on here. Bill Hudson was unable to make it. But, you know, our understanding of this is that, you know, this has been adjudicated through their processes of THSBOA, just like, you know, any of our organizations, any of the things that they have that go on, you know, that are violations of their policies are taken through the proper protocol within their organizations. And this one has been taken through that adjudication process. So Mr. Allen, did you have anything you wanted to add to that or any comments you wanted to make on behalf of THSBOA?
Thank you, Dr. Elza. Yeah, I mean, we did hold a hearing and we afforded the 4 individuals to speak before the association. The investigation was done and Dallas was properly sanctioned. And so, I mean, we felt like we did take action appropriately. I mean, if Dallas is going to circumvent any procedures, that's something that we have to always try to do. Any organization is try to ensure that the procedures can identify things that could slip through the cracks. And so we're made changes to help improve those processes. But yes, Dallas was sanctioned for their violations.
May I respond to that, Dr. Elsa?
Mr. Chairman, this is not an agenda item, so no action can be taken. Speaker's been given time.
Right.
You know, if the committee would like to get more information and put this on a subsequent meeting's agenda so that they can duly discuss and take action on it, that's at the will of the committee. But for today's meeting, this is not a hearing. This was not an agenda item. And I believe the speaker has been afforded the time allotted according to rule.
Yes, you're correct. We won't get into a discussion or a debate or anything on what has been or has not been done. THSBOA has done their investigation. So, Ms. Jones, my advice to you would be, if you would like to get put on the agenda, you would need to contact UIL for our fall meeting. But before you do that, I think you might want to visit with UIL, and because just to be honest with you, as far as the committee investigating any further, the way this is set up is the associations do their own investigating and any penalties or anything, and the committee really doesn't have the authority to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Elsa.
No, you're correct.
Yeah. So we appreciate your time. According to the THSBOA officers that are on this, they've done their investigation, they've taken action. So your best channel would be to go back through them probably, but we are always open to allowing you to speak again at the next meeting. But again, that's really not the job of this committee. Is we're set up to where the different associations take care of their own issues. So with that said, we will move on. I don't show any other scheduled speakers. Do we have any speakers that are unannounced? Okay, with no other speakers, we'll move on to new business. First item on the agenda is the discussion and revision of the rules of the UIL Sports Officials Committee, determination of basketball as a fall or spring sport. Dr. Elsa?
Yes, it's just, this one actually came from Mike Fitch, and Mike may want to speak to it, if I don't give enough detail, but essentially it's just the way our Sports Officials Committee rules are set up. And when we can have the consideration for the addition of chapters, just the way that it's set up for the fall, for our September meeting, if you will. And it appears, and I think we discussed this in the last meeting, we just didn't take any action on it, but for us to be able to change it in our Sports Officials Committee rules, we would have to take action on it. And the recommendation would be to move it to the spring, where it's a little bit more appropriate to accept chapters at that time, so they can properly plan for the fall, for the October start of basketball, excuse me.
Thank you, Dr. Elsa. I thank everybody. That's pretty clear. Most of the action for basketball issues would take place on our spring meeting instead of fall, and that makes perfect sense to me. Is there any discussion before I ask for a vote on this proposal? Okay. With no discussion, do I have a motion on this proposal to move basketball from fall to the spring as far as designation as a spring sport?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we move basketball as a spring sport from a fall sport.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mr. Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Reeves. Is there any more discussion? Okay, now that I think we all know how, I'll call for another vote on this proposal.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal has passed with the majority. I'm sorry, with a unanimous vote. Okay, next item on the agenda, and if it pleases the committee, what I would like to do, because this deals with the El Paso chapters and different sports, and a request by a school official from Favens to move the center point. This applies to item 2A1, 2B1, 2C2, 2C4, 2D2, and 2E1. They all have come from the same person. I think I'm okay, Dr. Elsa, in putting all this into one discussion and voting on them all. Is that, we good with doing that?
As long as the committee is in agreement.
Okay, is any concern from the committee on doing this? Okay, if you'll look in your packet, what this entails is Mr. Jake Belshi, I believe that is pronounced, who's a school representative at Fabens ISD, has requested that the different chapters of different sports in El Paso, which would be the El Paso chapter of baseball, the El Paso chapter of volleyball, the El Paso chapter in football, which is a TASO organization, and softball in El Paso, which is also TASO, and the basketball chapter in El Paso, which is THSBOA, and then the wrestling chapter in El Paso, which is TWOA, requesting that their center point be moved. I think it's 3 miles is the difference, if I remember correctly, 3 miles east, so that it will get Fabens into the 0 to 30.9 mile radius, which would be a positive effect for them. As far as negative effect on all the other schools they serve, there would be no. The unique thing about this proposal, usually the center point changes come from the officials association, and this one is coming from a school representative. So, and it involves TASO and THSBOA, and I think that's the only representatives we have in on the meeting. So, right quick before we start discussion, I know Mike brought up at the beginning that it had come from a school official. Eddie, you or David have a comment about this?
You know, I've not heard from our THSBOA chapter in El Paso with regards to this. I would really like to hear from Mike or Bill on how they feel this being done from a school and not a chapter. Moving the center point is different than allowing a school to get inside a center point, I would think. So we may need to look at the way the language is on it, because I don't want to move the center point to benefit a school, but I'm not opposed to looking at allowing a school to be within the lower center point. But I would like to talk to our chapter about it, and I have not been able to contact anyone there. This could open a can of worms, though, statewide if we do permit this. I'm just thinking, but I would like to hear some discussion about it.
Mike?
Mr. Chair, Bill Theodore will lead our discussion on all of the center point issues. So I'll turn it over to Bill.
Bill?
Good morning. I miss not seeing you guys in person. When this came through, we reached out to our TASO chapters in El Paso. Speaking for football and softball, they are adamantly opposed to making the switch. It's understood that it would positively affect the Fabens High School, but it's negatively going to affect the members that have to go to Fabens. It's reducing their travel. And so there is a concern there from those officials. Now, of course, this is hearsay. It wasn't discussed with, or I didn't personally partake in the conversation. However, both the TASO softball president and the football secretary reached out to all of the other sports, including the baseball association and the volleyball officials. And according to them, everyone was adamantly opposed to allowing Fabens to do this. And I believe that there was an email sent back to the UIL from these chapters, or at least a couple of chapters, that had expressed their desire not to allow this change to take place. my good friend, Mr. Hopkins, brings up a very valid point about a Pandora's box, if you will, that there are schools all across the state that sit right there on that line between 30.9 and 31 or whatever. And if they get the knowledge that they can force a chapter to move a center point, well, then what's the point of having a debarkation line? Official chapters can't tell a school how to pay the officials or do things like that. So there's some hesitance coming there to allow a school to tell a chapter that this is where your center point's going to be. So we would adamantly oppose this.
Mr. Chair, based on that and the fact that you probably know better than anybody what we went through creating these breaks and the lines that we did. You did a yeoman's work on this. I move that these requests be denied.
Okay, we're going to put all these together. So 4 items on the agenda, items 2A1, 2B1, 2C2, 2C4, 2D2, and 2E1. I have a motion to deny this request from Fabens ISD to move the center point for these El Paso officiating chapters. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Randy Davis. Any more discussion? I'll just put in my comment. We always try to be as fair as we can to both the schools and the officials chapters. I don't think we want to set a precedent of allowing schools to request moving center points. I just think that would really cause some issues down the road. I know the officials chapters work real hard with the school people to try to come to agreement on issues and vice versa. So I think we're going to set a precedent here with this as to probably in the future not allowing schools to request change in center points. So as long as everybody's good with that, which I am personally, I will ask for a vote at this time.
Mr. Chair, just to be sure, Eddie, your motion was to deny, right? So if I vote yes, I'm denying the request. I want to make sure I don't get caught up in a wrong yes or no vote here.
Yes, that is correct, Kyle. If you vote yes, then you are voting to deny this proposal, which means the center point will not be moved. Okay, at this time, if you'll vote.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor to deny the center point request.
Okay, let the record show that the proposals or the several proposals that were listed have passed with a unanimous vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Harrison.
If I may, I think the committee did a great job with that. I think I would echo the comments of the other committee members. We get on a very slippery slope if we allow an individual school to make that kind of request and find reason to support it. That means we're going to have to get into reasoning for when we would support and when we would not. And that's very difficult. I would also, just for background, in this particular case, as I understand it, the only school that would have been impacted is Fabens High School. So none of the other schools would have been impacted. They would not have picked up additional charges or less charges for officials. Only Fabens would have been positively impacted. They would have been able to save money. So in fairness, I would like to ask those representing officials organizations to just recognize that, right? What we would hope would happen here is that when you have a one-off case, we've talked about this a million times, very big state, very diverse, very difficult to find one size fits all answers. So when you have a one-off case like this one, you would hope that school would be able to work it out with those individual chapters. In this case, all of the chapters said, no, you're going to continue to pay us more. And that's okay. And we just supported that. I would just ask those representing officials organizations to remember that as we get into other agenda items where officials are going to ask schools to pay more, proposals that require additional costs to schools. So I think the committee made the right decision. That's the only way I would have advised to go. But I do want to point out, just in fairness, the other side of the issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 2C1 for Brush County Chapter of Baseball to move the center point. Mike, you familiar with this? Or I'm sorry, Bill, you're handling center points. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll handle. This is the Brush Country chapter. Their current center point is in Pleasanton, which is south and a little east of San Antonio. They're wanting to move their chapter center point approximately 26 miles to the northwest to Somerset. It's more of a geographic location center point for the area that they cover, which is 38 schools and 13,000 square miles. They go all the way from just south of San Antonio down to Laredo, and their members are either in the San Antonio area or live in the Laredo area. So it's a vast move there. If you look at the submission data, there were several schools that it would positively affect, but there were also some schools that it would negatively affect. So we would ask that the committee approve the change. They are just following the guidance that this committee gave them 2 years ago when this same situation came up with Brush Country, and they were instructed by this committee to make a request to move their center point. So that's what they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Any discussion from the committee?
Bill, do you have the numbers? You said there's 38 schools. Some will pay more, some will pay less. Do you know how many will pay more and how many will pay less?
4 schools will pay less. 8 schools will bump to the next ring.
Bill, did I hear you make the recommendation for this, or were you just presenting it? Are y'all in support of this?
Yes, we are in support of moving it due to the geographical area that they cover. Yes.
It's the way, what familiarity I have with the geography in that area. Currently, the center point is on the eastern side of all the schools they serve, and they're wanting to move it west. I know it's still a stretch. I think this chapter covers the Laredo schools. Is that right, Bobby? So
yes, it does. Yes.
So it's still going to be a long drive for the officials in Laredo that go up to the north part of the chapter and vice versa.
Correct.
But I just pulled up a quick map, and looking at the map and kind of figuring out how this thing runs, it is actually going to, there's really not a center except out there in the desert, but this is going to move it a little closer to what can be considered a center point. Bobby, you got any comment on this?
I had spoken to Robert Redding about this, and it makes sense, and I would agree with him. Just because moving it to Somerset would make a little more sense, and currently where it is right now, it's a little further up. But yeah, I've got no issue with this, and I had been in contact with Robert Redding several times before.
Okay. Any other comments from the committee?
One thing I would look at too is right now you have 4 school districts that are negatively impacted from what I'm reading, and this change would double that, correct? Like double the negative impact instead of having 4, you'd have 8 school districts as negatively impact. So my question is besides the fact that it's more centrally located, it's negatively impacting less school districts right now. So any thoughts on that?
Bill, if I could, or Kyle that knows baseball, are there any other chapters, TASO chapters, that could service these schools less mileage?
No, Eddie, from the, it's kind of falls right into the lap of brush country. I mean, you have the chapter that's in San Antonio, and we have a chapter that is in just east, or I'm sorry, just west of Corpus, down near Alice. But really, if you just picture the schools that are on I-35 and then branching off either way to the east or west from San Antonio to Laredo, I mean, it's desolate. There's nothing out there.
So, I mean, it's not like coach pick and they're choosing this chapter because of the quality of officials. They're basically choosing this chapter because that's all they've got.
Well, I hope there's quality officials in that.
I know that. I'm just saying, we know how schools and coaches.
Right, this is the closest to them. They know they're going to pay travel. It's just a matter of how much. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And there are quality officials there, Eddie. I mean, that's not the issue. Yeah.
Okay, good. That being the case, though, I support this proposal and would move that we allow that change.
Is that a motion, Eddie?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I've got a motion from Eddie to approve this request for center point change. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Kyle. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I just want to go back to it. I mean, we just denied one that affected no one. Now we're going to approve something that's going to affect 8 schools instead of 4. So that's why I'm not necessarily in favor of approving it.
Okay, Russ, I understand what you're saying. And I don't know that it negatively approves 4. I know it positively affects 4 if we move it, but I don't know how those other 32 schools, if it, they may be negatively affected also. They just didn't change by moving it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that.
I mean, Bill, can you clarify that? They went into 8 schools will go into the next mileage ring and have to pay more, correct?
According to the paperwork that was submitted to y'all, which schools would be negatively affected and by how much mileage? And there's Floresville, Freer, Karn City, Kennedy, Nixon, Smiley, Pettis, Poth, Rungay, and Three Rivers. So yes, 8. Pardon, 9.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask, I think I'm going to get to Russ's point, but maybe ask it a little different way. What problem are we solving? I mean, if we've got 4 that are paying more now, and we're going to have 8 that are paying more after, what's the goal of our move? What is it we're accomplishing?
If you read the reason for the change, the problem is officials that are in this chapter that are in Laredo, that live in the Laredo area, and they go to call a game at Floresville or LaPrire or Nixon Smiley. From where the center point is, they get less mileage. If this is moved, those officials that travel from Laredo up to the north part of the chapter will get the next mileage ring as far as travel. And those guys are traveling what? 200 miles round trip, but because of where the center point is, they're only getting like the second ring or something. That's what I gather from reading the reason for the change. Am I wrong in that, Bill?
No, sir, you would be correct. The majority of those schools are in the first band or right in, or a couple of them to the second, but it's, the problem that you have is and I think Bobby can relate to this, is you don't want to see the same umpires in Laredo every
Yeah,
week.
I was about to say that because it's vice versa, you know, for them as well. They turn down a lot. So we get to, I mean, there are quality officials there, but we end up seeing the same guys all the time because they don't want to take them because they're only going to get that first ring fee. Is that correct?
Does that answer your question, Russ?
Yeah. One thing too, and I think you already talked about it, but help me with the geography there. So the 9 school districts we're talking about, there's no other chapter they can use. Is that what I'm hearing? Are there any chapters close to them?
That would be correct, and chapters that could service them would pay what this approval, if you see fit, would be.
Okay,
and Russ, that's why I brought up my point. You know, it's going to be a give and take, because if they use another chapter, they could possibly come from further.
Yeah.
So Bobby, is it fair to summarize what you said, that you're okay paying more because it opens up to a greater number of umpires?
It opens us up to a greater number, and it's not that much more. Brush country. The next one for us would be San Antonio, and we've you know, just because of where we're located, we're 150, almost 200 miles away from everybody. So from Corpus, I'm talking about round trip. You know, from Corpus, we're 150. From the Valley, we're 150. From San Antonio, we're 155. So before Brush Country even existed, we used San Antonio. And right now, currently for softball, we use the San Antonio chapter. And because of that, because of softball, we get to see a variety of we don't see the same Laredo refs all the time.
Well, so then that answers the question for me. I don't know if it does for Russ.
It does.
The problem you're solving is you're opening up to a greater population of officials to get, which is something the school is willing to pay to get. So that answers my question.
Me too.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, I'll ask for a vote, and the motion is to approve this proposal to move the center point for the Brush Country baseball chapter from Pleasanton, I believe it is, to Somerset. So with that in mind, I'll ask for everybody to vote at this time.
It looks like I only have 6 of the 9 votes.
My screen's showing that Russ and Eddie
We need them to recast the vote, Dylan.
Yeah.
Brian, Mr. Davis, I mean.
So, okay, let's clear it. You want to clear it, then we'll recast?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay, Dylan, if you'll.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dylan, I know if you
Okay, everybody vote again, please.
Okay, it is unanimous in favor to approve.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal has passed with a unanimous vote. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Greater Longview chapter for soccer, which is a Tasso chapter, a change of center point. Bill?
Thank you. The Greater Longview chapter is taking 2 new schools, or 2 new programs at one school. It's in New Diana for the boys and the girls. They're wanting to move their center point to the north about 3.5 miles, which even if they didn't move it, New Diana is still going to stay into the same ring. And I think they mismarked on their page for schools that are positively affected, because currently Henderson is in the $15 band. And with this, they would go to the second ring of $30. And the justification that they gave was just because they're taking in New Diana and it makes their geographic center point more of a radius for all of the schools that they service.
Okay, so what way I understand this, if they don't move the center point, New Diana being a new program would fall under the same ring regardless whether it's moved or not.
That is my understanding, and I'm just confirming it one more time.
Okay, but if we do approve the move, then you think this is wrong and saying that it positively affects Henderson, you think it negatively affects Henderson?
Correct. Right now, Henderson is in the first band, and by making this move, it would put them right on the threshold of the second band.
Can I ask a question, Bill? So when you say new program at New Diana, what does that mean? Does that mean that they've been using another chapter and now they're going to it, or they started these programs?
They've started using, New Diana has started playing soccer.
Okay. Is there any other chapter that's close to them would put them in the 15-mile ring?
No, the only thing would be Tyler to the west.
Okay.
I'm going to make a comment here, Bill, while you're checking that. It appears to me that the addition of New Diana, the addition of them playing soccer with the current chapter center point has no effect whatsoever on on moving the center point. And Bill, you confirm that when you hear back from them. But it does negatively affect Henderson. And another issue I have with this proposal is the information they sent evidently is not correct. They have Henderson being positive and no negativity. With that said, I would be in favor of not approving this. And if they want to come back later with the correct information, then we'll look at it again at that point. Bill, have you found out anything?
You're right in your presumption there that they not moving the center point is still going to keep New Diana within 30, but moving it will.
And it will not be a negative effect on Henderson by keeping it where it is.
Correct.
So I don't understand the reason for wanting to move it other than you're going to have one negative effect, and the fact that the proposal, the reasoning for it is not correct, according to Bill. So I'll ask for any more discussion and or a motion.
I'll make a motion to deny the request due to inaccurate information.
Okay, I have a motion from Russ Reeves. Do I have a second to deny?
I second that motion.
Okay, second by Andre. Any more discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote at this time. You'll be voting yes to deny the proposal or no if you want to approve it.
Okay, I'm not sure why these votes keep going away. It looks like we had 6 at one point. It's only showing 4 votes right now. I got Brian's, Andre, Randy, and Bobby's vote right now.
If those other members could recast, please. Did you get it, Dylan?
We have 6 votes now. I'm not sure what's going on here. Russ and Teresa.
I definitely voted in favor, but if you need to record it, I'll re-vote.
Okay, it looks like it is in favor, 7 in favor, 2 against.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal passed with a vote of 7 in favor and 2 against. Okay. Next on the agenda is the Beeville chapter for basketball, and this is Beeville is a THSBOA chapter on a request for change of center point. David, do you have any information on this, and/or Eddie?
I've got a lot of information on this with regards to my tenure as chair and the time I spent in Corpus with these 2 chapters, Corpus and Beeville. It appears that they are close enough to work both. Schools can use both chapters pretty easily. And Mr. Chair, it has been an issue between these 2 chapters for a long time. So not really wanting to get into chapter politics, I would move that this request be denied.
Okay, I assume this is a sticky topic, the way you approach that. Anybody else have any comment?
I kind of agree with Eddie. I don't know all the particulars about anything, but my philosophy on this is that they have access to 2 chapters and they can determine how much they want to pay based on what chapter they want to use. So that's why I would want to deny the proposal.
Any other comment? Okay, I need somebody to put that into a form of a motion.
I make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Eddie has made the motion to deny the Beeville chapter for change of center point. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Russ Reeves has seconded. Any more discussion? Okay, I'll ask everybody to vote at this point.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal or the motion was approved with a unanimous vote. That is to deny. Okay, next on the
Looks
agenda.
like Bill.
Do what?
Bill has his hand raised. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Bill.
My apologies, but we also had one center point proposal that we know was sent in, but we don't see it on the agenda, and it was for Northeast Texas volleyball.
We were going to get to that, Bill. And Brian, I think I discussed this with you last week. So there was a SAP chapter center point request that did make the deadline, but we had already posted the agenda. So there, it is not on your agenda, but you know, Dylan, I don't know if you want to fill any gaps in on that one, but we can kick it over to Bill. Dylan, if you don't have anything to add to that, so that he can explain that chapter center point request.
No, Bill would be able to explain it more, I believe. It looked like there was a letter from, was it the Dallas chapter saying that they did not approve, or they did not agree with the change. But basically they were requesting 2 center points, and they submitted it on Friday, which was the deadline that we had set. But yeah, Bill can expand on that if they do approve that or not.
But let me ask a question first, Bill. Are you
Yes.
saying that it got in too late to be put on the agenda, so we cannot take any action?
No, it did not. It didn't get placed on the agenda, but we can still take it into consideration because it met the timeline
Okay, it just didn't get put on the agenda, but
before posting.
okay. All right, go ahead, Bill.
Northeast Texas Volleyball, their current center point is in Mount Vernon, which is up off of I-30. The coverage area for this chapter, you look at the charts that were provided, extend from Texarkana all the way northeast, and they put on their request that they cover in the Rockwall area. Well, basically, those are private schools that in Rockwall, their coverage area is a little bit more to the east of that. As far as their schools that will be affected, there are none that will negatively be affected according to them. They're requesting 2 center points, one for the eastern half, which would be moved to Mount Pleasant, and then one which in the western half, which would they were asking for Greenville. Now, with Dallas volleyball not being that far away from Rockwall or even Greenville for that matter, we felt obligated to reach out to our volleyball chapter in Dallas to get their input. They have responded, as you can see by the letter that was included into your packet. TASO will neither oppose or promote making this change for the center points. This is something that is requested by Northeast Texas for having 2. There is a precedent for chapters having 2 center points. I believe in the Dallas letter, they recommended or said that they would be okay if Northeast Texas wanted to make that western center point in Sulphur Springs instead of Greenville. And when I reached out to the Northeast Texas chapter to pass along that information, their response to me was, if we do not get Greenville and Mount Pleasant, we will just keep what we have. So that's the gist of our position on it.
Bill, you said that Dallas had sent an email or a letter. I don't have that in my packet. Do any other committee members?
No, sir. It was not included in that packet.
Okay.
That we didn't receive that letter until Friday.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Basically, the letter simply states that Dallas is okay as long as they go to Sulphur Springs instead of Greenville. Is that basically what the letter says?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, this is Joel. Just if I could have a little input.
Sure.
I think that when we're looking at moving it to where Northeast wants to, you kind of get into the same situation where we just dealt with the Beeville, is that it gets it really close to Dallas, and we start picking and choosing, and maybe advantageous for that the Northeast. They feel maybe they can pick up some schools if they move their center point further over. That's why I think Dallas suggested, okay, if you move it not as far west to Sulphur Springs. And of course, I think Northeast basically said, well, if you're going to do that, we're just not going to move it. So like I said, I think there may be some other issues if you move it closer to Dallas.
And I'll also second what Joel says. It's kind of like what I've been saying the whole time is that districts have a choice right now. And if we start moving center points and things like that, then we're going to start getting into turf war, so to speak. And I want to stay out of that. I think that anybody in Rockwall that doesn't want to pay the Northeast fee can get the Dallas chapter, and they're going to be within. It's going to be cheaper. So I just think that if we start moving center points and things like that, when areas are being serviced, I think we're getting into, we're going to open up the Pandora's box that everyone's been talking about. Just my opinion.
Okay, any more discussion? Do I have a motion of any kind?
I make a motion to deny the request.
Okay, I have a motion from Russ Reeves to deny the request. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
A second from Teresa McAllister. Any more discussion? Okay, no more discussion. I'll ask for a vote.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor.
Okay, let the record show that the motion to deny passed with a unanimous vote. Okay, next on the agenda, item number 3, discussion of penalty for physical contact with an official. Dr. Elsa, do you want to start this or you want to go straight to Mr. Finch?
I'll go straight to Mr. Fitch.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Elza. First, I want to thank Dr. Harrison and Dr. Cousins for their input on this. They were instrumental in creating this. This stems from the very vicious assault on a football official down in Edinburgh this past season. And while we all agree that the state executive committee currently has pretty much the authority to end the team season, it's just kind of a little bit ambiguous. So what number 1, the addition of number 1 basically is saying that the school, if you have a player that assaults an official, that the school, the SEC has the full range of penalties, which would include ending their season, whether it be the first game of the season or the last game. And we've had both. For the Edinburgh situation, it was near the end of the season. None of us will ever forget the John Jay situation. That was the first game of the season. So it's basically, it's just making it more clear and clarifying that the SEC has that authority. Number 2, actually, I plagiarized that from a bill from, I believe it was Lucio, that he's introduced, that basically says if, well, his actually says a parent or guardian. We didn't see why we want to limit it. But basically, if a parent or guardian or spectator of any type assaults a sports official, then that school will prohibit that individual from attending any of the UL activities. And a couple of things here. There is no time period on this, and we're not sure there actually should be. I think that could be up to the school because not all assaults are the same. So if it's relatively minor, it could be for a shorter time. If it's serious, it could be forever. Now, one last thing before I let others speak on this. I should have mentioned this at first. All of our proposals we know are, and many times, major changes to the UL Constitution and contest rules. So we're certainly not going to put the SOC committee on the spot of having to make a decision today. It's our intention that we lay all of these out, and then all of the stakeholders will have an opportunity to discuss this, and we will work with any of them to revise any language it needs to be. And then when we come back in September, we will have language that all of the stakeholders agree on. And if we do, that's going to make your job easier.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I think what Mike just said, I was fixing to bring up. This proposal would have to be approved by the Legislative Council, of course. And I think Mike is just getting it out in front of us just as a communication and to keep us informed. With that said, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Harrison or Dr. Elsa, we don't really need to take any action. We just need to be aware of this and let it go through its course as far as with the different coaches associations and athletic directors association and ultimately to the legislative council. Am I correct there?
Mr. Chair, you are correct that you do not have to take action. If the committee would like to take action to send this to council as a recommendation, you certainly can do that, but you're not required to.
Well, me personally, I'm all in favor of it because of the proposal. You know, I'm not sure about the exact language, but we've got to get something done to stop the way some of our spectators and or athletes and are acting. And, you know, the two incidents that Mike brought up are unacceptable in my opinion. So I'll leave it up to the committee if there's any more discussion, or if somebody would like to make a motion to recommend this go to the legislative council. Is that correct, Dr. Harrison?
That's correct.
Okay. Any comments?
Yeah, if we were to approve this, which what I'm hearing Mike say is that it creates clarity. Does this proposal, is it going to be vetted through, because I know there's laws and things that we're required to do if we're going to kick someone out of a game. I believe the state law says that it lasts for 2 years. But Jamie, can you kind of talk about any legal issues that this would affect if we were to push it forward?
Yeah, so there's really two elements to this. The first part is about the possibility of suspending a team because of action. So that really is not a rule change, as Mike described, and he did a great job of it. It does offer clarity, but I think more than offering clarity, it also just brings it to the forefront. It makes schools and coaches in particular aware that this needs to be a part of coaching. More than just knowing where to line up and how to line up and when the snap count is, or you know, how to go rebound and box out. You need to also coach sportsmanship and make sure your team is aware that if you take serious action on your own, you could cost your entire team. That needs to be a part of coaching. So that's part of it. Then the second part is about spectators. Again, Mike did a great job of describing it. It's not overly prescriptive, which allows schools to make some local decisions based on all of the facts of each situation. And prior to council taking action, we will sift through whatever state law. Obviously, state law is going to supersede any UIL rules, so we'll make sure that they're not in conflict.
Then I make a motion that we approve the recommendation as stated.
And I wholeheartedly second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion from Russ Reeves, seconded by Eddie Hopkins, to put our blessings on this proposal and to move it on down the line. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a comment. I know that this is not in our wheelhouse because these events are not sanctioned events. And I'm talking about AAU and I'm talking about 7-on-7. But some of our officials are working those games. I'm at some of those games. Some of those same parents attend our sanctioned games and they don't act the same, right? So I don't know if there's some kind of way, again, it's adding more to the plate, but I don't know if it's some kind of way that we can work with those other groups so it won't spill over, or they understand what we're doing and hopefully they will adopt some of those things. Again, just wanted to make a comment. I don't know if there's anything we can do about that, but I just wanted to put it on the record.
I think what we can do, Andre, at a minimum, is serve as an example. So many of those leagues follow what we do because we tend to do it well. And this is one of those, I'm hesitant to say rare examples, but at least less common examples of, you know, this is UIL staff and school administrators and sports officials all coming together to do something good, and we all agree, right? When we're looking at whether or not we move a center point, there tends to be winners and losers, and you guys do a great job of making reasonable decisions on those, but to some degree it's one side versus the other. That's not the case here. we all agree this is a good idea. And so I think at a minimum, we can serve as an example and hope that those non-school leagues will pay attention and find a way to help implement something similar to what we have. And hopefully parents and spectators and kids who have to meet a certain behavioral expectation that we are now setting, who then go off and compete in other leagues, will carry the lessons with them that they've learned through these kinds of policies.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. At this time, if you'll vote.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor.
Okay. Let the record show that the proposal has passed with a unanimous vote. Okay, next on the agenda, proposal to amend section 1204 of the UIL Constitution and Contest Rules. Specifically, TASO's request to change officials' payment time period from 45 days to 21 days and assess a late fee. Mike, I'll ask for your comment here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's actually three parts to this. One of them is a point of clarification, and I'll go ahead and mention that first. Sometimes there's a third party involved. Probably baseball is the one that we see this most, but it's happening in other sports where there's tournaments, that the booster club will sponsor a tournament, and the booster club is responsible for paying the officials. They somehow think that they're not subject to UIL rules. We've got some baseball tournaments that were held in early February that our officials still have not been paid for. When we call the coach, the response is, well, that's the booster club's tournament, not ours, call them. 1204 makes it clear that the host school is responsible. So we're actually just clarifying that again, where there's no questions that if the booster club doesn't come through, it's on the host school. That's the first part of this. The second has to do with the 45 days. I believe in reviewing and going back in the history of this. In fact, I believe Dr. Braddock was initially involved in putting this in many, many years ago. And back then we were doing all of our banking by writing checks and getting bank statements in the mail, and many school districts met once a month to approve all of the payments from the previous month. Well, technology has changed all that, and we just don't need 45 days. We find that some schools are now intentionally holding checks for 40 days. And when we call them, the response is, well, we got 45 days, so don't call us until then. That's just not fair. We've got some young officials that need those 7th and 8th grade game fees many times to just make ends meet. The third one is if a school, the third part of this is if a school fails to meet the time window, then there would be a $25 late fee per contest per official that the school must pay. Now, we put in a provision for catastrophic events like the pandemic or the severe weather that we've seen. The one thing that I probably overlook, and actually Coach Coach Walker pointed this out to me, that sometimes our officials may not complete the pay sheet. They may not put the vendor number. So probably we need to add a clause that the window starts from the date of the contest or when all of the proper paperwork is submitted. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Okay. Any discussion or questions from the committee?
I think if we were going to discuss like changing the time period, which 45 days was done at a different time, I think, something that we could consider is maybe making it 30 days. I like the month for school districts instead of 3 weeks. So I'm not opposed to, looking at that, I mean, what's the thoughts of the committee about maybe dropping it from 45 to 30 days?
I agree with Russ on that. I think 21 days is, especially for your larger districts like Andres, Dallas, in the north side, and San Antonio. Just ourselves, Laredo United, we've got 4 high schools and 12 middle schools. We had over 1,000 events, games. I think 3 weeks is cutting it close, but I'm certainly not opposed to the month as Russ is recommending.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Although we've personally made some great gains, we're not there yet. We are doing a much better job of getting officials paid in a timely manner. But we're still doing the checks. We're not doing them electronically. And so we will need that additional time. And I appreciate Mr. Fitch for speaking about the vendor and getting that information, having all the information from the officials so we can process those vouchers in a timely manner. So, I can see us doing the 30 days, but I think the 21 is not feasible right now. Although that's the goal. I don't want to say we want to pay them as fast as we can, but I think that 30 would be better than 20.
Well, I do think that there's a lot of things associated with this that needs to be vetted. Just my opinion. I mean, where does $25 late fee come in? I mean, is that just an arbitrary number? If there's paperwork that's not turned in on the official side. So there's a lot of variables, I think, that need to be cleaned up before we would move on something like this. Just my opinion.
Mr. Chair, if I could say something, and Mr. Walker, I think Houston ISD has gotten tremendously better, but also I think you allow each campus in pre-district games to pay their own officials. Is that correct? So it doesn't go through HISD's athletic department. And that has caused some problems in the past with the different campuses paying as they should. We were even told that they ran out of money before our officials got paid one time. But having said that, I wish we could possibly think about a standardization statewide of the paperwork that is submitted by officials. We've got some menagerie of ways that officials submit for payment. And if we could maybe think about a standardization and possibly a UIL document for the UIL schools we work for, so that the officials can submit that document and it's consistent statewide, because really, even in our small chapter in East Texas of 35 schools, I'd say 10 of them have different ways of paying officials. And I can only imagine what it's like in the Metroplex, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. So maybe we need to consider and possibly be the catalyst to get a standardized form for UIL sponsored events.
Mr. Chair, with that being said, I make a motion that we table this discussion till a later date.
Okay, I have a motion to table this item. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Second, motion from Andre and second from Russ. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, since we tabled it, that means it's going to have to come up at our next meeting. Can we maybe do an ad hoc committee or work with TASO or work with somebody to come up with a plan so that when it comes back up, we'll be prepared to address it? Or would that be proper?
Oh, I think we can do that if it's what the committee would like to. Dr. Elson, were you fixing to say something?
Yeah, Eddie, I think that's a good thought. One thing I want to do is just express thoughts on both sides, because we hear from both sides in our role. There is an issue with officials being paid in a timely manner. There was a really big issue during COVID when everything shut down last spring. We had officials that weren't paid for an extended period of time. And I know I spoke to a number of schools and they had valid reasons for not paying them. For some of the scenarios that are non-COVID related, there are schools that just maybe don't feel the same sense of urgency. Paperwork gets lost. So a solution is needed to this. Maybe we don't have that completely defined. I think this committee can be pivotal in that. And I think that Eddie's recommendation for an ad hoc is appropriate.
Okay, any more discussion?
I'd like to just add real quick and just maybe way off base, but you know, the officials are recommending the prompt payment and about this late fee of $25 per contest. I guess that would go to the official. You know, in some cases here, and I'd like to see if we could look into. I'm not too sure about this late fee because, like Dr. Elza just said, there's a different variety of reasons. But is at the same time, sometimes we have an issue like here with us, and it happens at the lower sub varsity. You know, I get coaches that call me and say, you know, every Saturday morning, every weekend, you know, officials are showing up at halftime because they're running late, and then guess what? They submit their form and they want to get paid for the whole game. And so, you know, I'd like to see something as well as we're considering this $25 late payment fee. I mean, at the same time, I'd like to see what, and it doesn't happen often, but I like to see what we can do about those officials that show up, you know, before the half or at halftime, and they submit for full payment.
I think what Bobby's saying is it needs to work both ways.
Absolutely.
In some way. And I think the ad hoc committee is a great idea to work with the different officials and organizations to come up with a plan. Just my 2 cents worth. As far as the third parties paying, booster clubs are supposed to have a school person as part of their board. So I don't know why the school couldn't pressure that booster club to get the payment made. Other organizations that sponsor tournaments, Mike, sometimes the school doesn't have much influence with. So I see that. I mean, I understand your frustration, but I'm not sure what we as school people can do to help there. The 21-day, I agree on the 30-day might be a better solution. I know a lot of schools that write checks once a month. And so the 30 days should get everybody covered there. As far as the late fee, you know, if you turn in your paperwork the day after that check, that school has written their monthly checks, then you're looking at 30 days down the road, and time you get the check, it may be a little over 30 days. So I'm a little leery of the late fee. But again, I think we need to get an ad hoc committee to work with the associations and see what they can come up with. And again, by tabling this, I think we might want to, I think Andre made the motion. Is that correct? Andre, would you like to amend your motion to table it and appoint an ad hoc committee to work with the officials association to, I would say, refine this proposal? Mike, is that suitable with you?
Yes, sir.
Andre, would you like to amend your motion?
No problem, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we table this discussion as well as develop an ad hoc committee to discuss and develop a plan.
And Russ,
And
you second it. You'll second the amended motion?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
any more discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry in advance. I'm going to further complicate matters. If you guys would direct UIL staff to work on this matter, we will put together a group of people to do it.
As far as the ad hoc committee?
If we create an official ad hoc committee of UIL, then we're going to get into a whole set of open meeting standards that are going to require postings and formalities that might be less productive. We'll do it. I think we all agree. I'm not trying to get out of it. I'm just trying to avoid those formalities if we can.
So do we need to amend the motion again, or just?
I think you just, if Andre would just clarify that what he meant by his motion was telling us to do some work, we'll promise to get it done.
So we won't need to, this committee does not need to assign an ad hoc committee. UIL will take care of that. Is that correct?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, Andre, you understand what we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in this motion, not only develop an ad hoc committee, but kick it down the road to UIL to do as such.
Yes, sir. Okay, here it is again. I'm making a motion, make a motion that we table this discussion, as well as have UIL to create an ad hoc committee to further discuss and visit at a later date.
Russ, you good with that?
Yes, I second it.
Okay, any more discussion? Dr. Harrison, you good with that motion and second? Dr. Elsa? Okay, I'll ask for.
Real quick. I
Okay.
had no idea I was confusing a process. Had no heads up on that. Thanks.
Okay. All right, I'll ask for the vote at this time.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal was tabled with giving the UIL staff to develop an ad hoc committee to refine this proposal, and that was unanimous. All right, next on the agenda. Number 5, proposal for scratch policy language adjustment. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's actually no action. We're going to ask of the committee at this time. This is more of a get ready, here it comes. We've been discussing the scratch policy, which in our opinion is a little outdated, with all the stakeholders, both the coaches associations, athletic directors association. Everybody agrees it's a little outdated. Coming up with the language is going to be almost as difficult as the travel reimbursement, just because there's so many variables in how games are assigned, when they're assigned. 1204 says that the visiting school must be notified within 14 days before the contest of who the officials are. So, our first thought was, okay, well, let's say the officials are accepted 10 days if they haven't been objected to. But yet I know we've got chapters in some of the sports that are lucky if they can get the schedule done 4 or 5 days in advance. So I'd like to just make you aware that we will be working with all the stakeholders, hopefully coming back in September with language that everyone can live with.
Okay, so with that said, I think what we would want to do is just take no action on this proposal.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Harrison, Dr. Elsa, that work? All right, I'll ask for a motion to take no action on this proposal at this time.
Make that motion.
Joel Hillier made the motion. Do I have a second?
I will second it.
Okay, Russ seconds it. Any more discussion? All right, at this time, please vote, and the vote is to take no action.
It looks like I still need Eddie and Teresa's vote. Okay, it is unanimous in favor to take no action.
Proposal, no action will be taken on the proposal by unanimous vote. Next on the agenda, number 6, discussion of established requirements for game administrator. Mr. Fitch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is certainly nothing new. You have seen this proposal before. I understand some of the economic challenges to some of the schools, but there's no question, we're all aware that problems with spectators getting worse and worse, as Coach Walker even indicated. And he's exactly right. The problems start in the youth sports and the AAU, where there is no no policies or procedures on this. And so the parents come into our junior highs and think that bad behavior is acceptable. Most of our problems occur in the junior high level. So obviously, I mean, this, again, we've seen this proposal before. It is to have a game administrator at every facility, at every level, and nothing else to add to it, except you will see it at every SOC meeting from now until the end of the world, until it gets passed, because this is passionate with me. Thank you.
And with that said, this committee cannot approve this proposal. All we can do is either recommend that it, or give it our blessings and send it on down to the legislative council, or take no action. And I don't think it really matters, because Mr. Fitch is going to keep presenting this to the legislative council. He's simply informing us that he's going to. So it'd be at the will of the committee to pass it as recommending that it be approved by the legislative council, or simply take no action.
I would make a motion that we approve this to send to the legislative council. I think this is so very important, even more so at that sub-varsity level, where you don't have the barriers between officials and fans. I think it's even more important at those lower levels.
Okay, I have a motion by Joel Hilliard to give this proposal our blessings and send it down the line to the legislative council. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Kyle McNeely. Any more discussion?
Yeah, Brian, as far as that, so clarify what you said about Mike. What's the difference between Mike doing it or us doing it? Is it just to make it more official since we're sending the recommendation? Because I know Mike brings this up at the legislative council as well.
We're not actually sending the recommendation. We're just giving it our approval. Mike will be the one that will present it as a proposal.
Okay.
Yeah, the difference for us is it can come as a recommendation from the committee. You guys did that on a prior action item. And or you can vote not to do that, and Mike can just bring it from TASO. That's the real difference.
So we've already sent it to the legislative council previously, correct?
It's gone to council. It went to committee. It's the age old. Everybody wants to support officials. Everybody needs to know that on this committee, and I know y'all know that. It's the challenge of having enough administrators to go around, and it's, you know, and Mike and I talk about this constantly and consistently. There is a challenge, and you are, you know, the safety of officials can be at risk because they're not there. I think our school districts do a great job. And during the course of that discussion, it was the same discussion as always, that, you know, they don't see that this one size fits all solution to this. So, you know, basically, if you guys push this back forward and don't have a recommendation to make with it, it could go into some sort of cycle again. If y'all have something that you want us to study or do with that, that would be appropriate as well.
Russ, to add to her answer to your question, which I think was, have you sent it to council before? As Dr. Elza described, it has definitely been discussed by council before. I would have to double check minutes. I don't remember this committee sending it to council, but it has been discussed.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I would like to add as well, like Dr. Elza said, you know, sometime with us, it may be a person who is in a cohort to be an administrator, or it may be someone other than a full-fledged administrator that's the person on duty. With so many activities going on, especially in the spring, it is very, very hard because you have multiple things going on, as well as your varsity events that could be taking place at a different location. So I think it's hard to say that has to be I don't know if the language could be different, but I think it would be very, very hard to say that it has to be an administrator, but it needs to be someone that principal places in charge of that event. Is what we do now. Principal comes out with a schedule and they document who should be where, what time, and the location.
Mr. Fitch?
Yes, and I just wanted to emphasize what Coach Walker just said. If that is true, it does not have to be a school administrator, and many times it's not now. And maybe, one of the things we talk about is changing the name to a game manager or something along those lines, because it can be just a staff member, and sometimes we've seen teachers who are not coaches, but they have a passion for a particular sport and they become the quote game administrator. But it is not required that they be a school administrator to be a game administrator.
And one other thing, Brian, too, I know, is this something I'll ask Susan or Jamie, is this something we could send to the UIL staff? Would that be something? I know we've got a motion on the table right now, but
I mean, y'all can always ask us to study anything. The ad hoc thing is what I was a little unaware of, and Dr. Harrison helped correct that. So, Dr. Harrison?
Yes, you can definitely send it to staff. Staff would ask for clarity on what you're sending. What are you asking us to do?
Yeah.
Again, this has been discussed multiple times with council, so we're happy to help. Just give us some pretty clear direction on what it is you would be asking us to do.
Yeah, and let me piggyback on that. I mean, a lot of times we just hear from Tasso, and obviously with Eddie being on our committee, we hear from him, but we have, a number of other organizations, with all due respect to the ones in El Paso and, our wrestling association, and it affects so many others. I think that there needs to be a little bit more of a holistic approach to this.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I had hoped that I had plenty of time, but I am 1 minute away from not having enough time. I would like to thank the committee for your time. You still have some more business to conduct, but I have to jump off for another call or another Zoom, so I do apologize. But thank you all for being on here and for hanging in with us this year. It has been a meat grinder of a year, but we could not have completed everything that we've completed without all the school administrators doing what they've done, and we wouldn't have a single game in any year if we didn't have officials there to get us through. So thanks to both groups for helping us through a difficult year.
Thanks, Dr. Harrison. Okay, our motion is for this committee to recommend approval of a game administrator and give support to this, but not to necessarily send it on to legislative council. I think Tasso was going to do that. And I can't even remember who made the motion. Was it?
Mr. Chairman, it was Joel.
I'm sorry, Joel made the motion, and I believe Kyle seconded it. Do we want to look at changing the motion or just go forward with the way it was given? Any discussion there?
Mr. Chair, I do have a little discussion, and I think, again, as we did with the pay sheet, I think we need some standardization statewide as to the role of this person and what it's going to be. Unfortunately, I was a victim where the superintendent was the problem, and he was the game administrator. So we probably ought to also look into a situation to where we give these folks that are assigned this duty a standardized set of rules that they are to abide by. They really need to be neutral. And in some cases, especially our smaller schools, they're very passionate and they're not very neutral sometimes. So, I agree with Mike. It's an epidemic statewide, and we're losing officials because of their abuse. And it's really more so in the junior high and JV level than it is the varsity level where this assignment is made. So I think we need some really good sit-down dialogue whenever we can do that, again, in person. But we need to understand, and legislative council that's made up of superintendents needs to understand that they don't need to be the problem. And we need to try to resolve it somehow. I want to be proactive on this because it is such a problem statewide, and it's horrible to try to recruit new officials when they're getting abused like they are. Our retention rate's not good on young officials. And so it is a problem, but I think we need to really find a way to deal with it, and maybe a standardized, and those rules may be in there that I'm missing. But I see the responsibilities that Mike laid out here, and on number 4, there was a line drawn through assist the officials if they need to discourage unsportsmanlike conduct. Sometimes that escalates the problem. When you tell somebody they need to sit down and be quiet, 3 times up and down the floor later or whatever, they get worse. So I don't know. I'm all in favor of us beefing this up, but I can see with the number of districts we have statewide, and surely the number of schools within those districts statewide, I understand from a financial standpoint, but more so it's just a human standpoint. Of how
I agree, Eddie, and just to reiterate what Andre said earlier, you know, it really stems from those lower levels, and it gets really bad when like here, for example, in Laredo, you know, we have these leagues and boys and girls clubs, and these kids are playing at such a young age, kindergarten all the way to 6th grade. And you go to that venue that's not sanctioned by the UIL, and it's a free for all. You know, you've got fights, you've got people coming, you know, parents coming to blows, parents, you know, going after officials. They've got to call police and security because something happened there, and it goes unmonitored and unregulated, K through 6th. And a couple of times that I've been there to watch, you know, my little nephews, or even when my daughters were growing up, I would flat out tell parents, I said, you need to calm down, because when you get to us, in one of our venues at our middle school, 7th grade, you're going to get kicked out of here. And I think the direction that we're going, I like that we need to tighten it up. And especially when we talk about suspending people and removing people from games, or possibly suspending them for the remainder of the season. I think like Jamie said earlier, Dr. Harrison, I mean, we can serve as a great example of what the etiquette, what the behavior should be.
Well, if I understood Dr. Elsa right, I mean, I don't want to send this forward to the council and have it get back into do loop. And what I understood Dr. Elsa saying is let's take an opportunity with, and I don't know how this is, Dr. Elsa, but an ad hoc committee involving more people, getting something with a little bit more holistic, but very supported by everybody involved, action that we take forward that maybe will have a little bit more weight. That I'm interested in. I really don't want to send it forward and keep Mike in business by having him always bring it up again. I'd really like to do something that can get done, because I think we all are in violent agreement that this is a major problem.
Kyle, that's great. I want to reinforce what you said. That's what, you know, I still have a hard time not thinking I'm in schools, but I'm also a problem solver. And when you go to UIL, you work for everybody. And I don't want something to go with some sort of blessing from the SOC that, you know, might not gain the traction it deserves. And the resolution of it is to come up with something a little more foolproof. And you know, Mike, I know you probably going, Susan Elsie, you haven't come up with one foolproof thing yet, but it's not just up to me. And it's not just up to the people on this committee. You know, I think anyone that's on here would agree that some of our stuff is a little bit outdated, and maybe the way that we communicate it and reinforce it. You know, that we maybe need to peel back our layers and how we're going to approach it every year. And I don't know that that's the complete resolution. That's how I see it from my vantage point of being able to have been in schools and now be at UIL. And then somewhere in there, there's a solution. Bobby brought up the best point. There are contests not played at school facilities. How are we going to deal with that if there's not an administrator on duty? Is the school responsible for that? A redefinition is something that I think can be very beneficial to all of us. And Kyle, I appreciate your words, because it's important that everyone knows that it's not about that we don't identify it as a problem. We just need to come up with a better solution. And I would prefer anything that came from this committee be successful. I think y'all all would. And that's my 2 cents worth, and I'm going to kick it over to the chair.
Okay. with all of that discussion, our motion right now is to recommend approval of this proposal and send it on to the Legislative Council. After discussion, is there any other ideas other than just supporting the proposal? Well, let me throw this in there. I get the feeling, I may be wrong, that everybody's in great support of this, and maybe we need to put a little more meat behind it by getting some, not just this committee, but maybe some other organizations involved in coming up with a really tough, concrete proposal that's got some muscle behind it. Am I reading the committee wrong or not?
No, I agree with that, Brian. I think that that sending it back to the Legislative Council, like Kyle was mentioning, would just throw it back into a tailspin and may slow it down. I think that might be a detriment.
Not to X your motion, Joel, but maybe we want to look at requesting that UIL staff come up with an idea in collaboration with the Officials Association and these committee members of an ad hoc committee with several entities involved, and to get some weight put behind this proposal. Dr. Elza, is that a possibility?
Certainly is.
And have that ready at our next meeting in the fall?
By September?
Mr. Chairman, I would amend that to have all the officials associations work hand in hand with UIL to come up with a solid, agreed upon path forward. Because like you said, it is important. I think some of the language in here is really good, as it doesn't say a school administrator, it says a game administrator, so that could be anybody appointed by the school. But I agree with you that we have, maybe a neutral site, and we would have to figure out the rules there too. So I would make that amendment to create or leave it up to UIL to create some type of committee that could study this further and have something ready in the fall so it can be presented.
Just my 2 cents worth. I'm in full agreement, Joel. But to answer your question, Kyle, I've been involved with UIL in one capacity or another for 35 years, and to say that we definitely have something by the fall might be pushing it, because we don't even have the ad hoc committee appointed yet. It takes time, and then you meet, and there's going to be probably more than one meeting because just how things work. But I would say we need to get a concrete type proposal as soon as possible.
Brian, I agree with that. At the same time, if we don't, sometimes my experience, if we don't time bound something, then it lingers for a long time. That's why I was looking for a timing. If and we work to make that timing. If we can't, then we understand it and we talk that in the fall.
Right.
But my fear is if we don't provide some timing, we'll be talking this in 5 years.
Sure.
Well, and I understand your concern. I know Dr. Elza well enough. If we put her in charge of getting the committee together, she'll do it in a very timely manner. That's not my point. My point is it may take several meetings of that committee to get, the proposal put together. But if I would suggest we try to have this done by our fall meeting, which is usually in September, and if not, definitely by next spring's meeting. Everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah, we're comfortable with the healthy timeline and understand the sense of urgency for sure.
Okay. Any more discussion or comments? Okay, so I've got a motion to show this committee's support for this proposal and to ask UIL to form an ad hoc committee to study it further and to refine it and put some muscle behind it. I've got a motion and a second. At this time, I'll ask for a vote.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor.
Okay, let the record show that the proposal has the backing of the committee and that an ad hoc committee will be formed with the help of UIL staff, and that was unanimous. Okay, item 7, discussion of water polo officials flat fee schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As everyone knows, in the fall of 2022, water polo will become a UIL sport. However, TASO has already created our water polo division, accepting members. We have our own board of directors, our own set of officers, because they are governing the club sport as they continue to play club in the spring of this year. They're currently in their season. And then they'll play in the spring of 22 and then be a UIL sport in the fall of 22. To give the athletic directors ample opportunity to start planning budgets, we're laying out the proposed fee schedule now. This was agreed to and prepared by the Water Polo Board of Directors of the TASO division. I like the approach they took. They like the simplicity of the soccer model, where there's not any direction between varsity and sub-varsity. Everything is based on the lengths of, well, a half in soccer, but a quarter in water polo. Right now, most the varsities are 7 minutes. That's what the National Federation rule book says. And then for sub-varsity, there's 6 minutes. And then sometimes in tournament and the pool play, no pun intended, it's a smaller amount for 5-minute quarters. And to answer your question, there are 2 officials, because everybody's going to say, well, how many officials does water polo have? They have 2, and no, they do not get in the pool. They're on the side. So this is our recommendation that this fee schedule be adopted for water polo beginning when they become a UIL sport in the fall of 2022.
Okay, I don't know how many of you committee members had a chance to look this over, but this is pretty much in line with our other sports as far as the game fee. Slightly, a little variance depending on the sport, but I think it's well within line of our other fees. Anybody have any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I want to first of all thank Mike for his work on this, because taking on a new sport, by the blessing of this committee is no easy task. The one thing, I think that the committee has 2 choices on this. Agree 100% with Mr. Davis that, it obviously is in line with our pay scale. I did ask Mike, was this projected on, his fee increase proposal that is for 22-23, which is the next item of consideration? He said no, that he had configured this based on current, the way that we're currently paying officials. The playoff structure, that's the one piece I want y'all to consider. So y'all can consider this in part and just have the regular season approved. We do not have the playoff structure for water polo completed. We will by the September meeting. So you could safely move this to the September meeting. Let us report back. Probably maybe even have Mike make sure that everything is lined up like he wants it in terms of the proposal for the pay for the water polo officials. And it can be a complete package, or y'all can just, like I said, just go ahead and do the regular season, and we can come back and do the postseason at another time. If you're asking my recommendation, I would say that it's just probably better to push it to September, but I'm going to leave that to the choice of the committee.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Elsa. Due to the fact this activity won't officially start until a year from this September, I agree with Dr. Elsa as the chair that we ought to just table this until our September meeting, and we'll have a more defined playoff bracket as far as water polo, and that'll give Mike time to look at that and see if he wants to make any changes to this recommended fee. With that said, is there any discussion and or a motion to table?
I think wait until September is a good idea. And when we set our budgets for 2022, that's going to be at the beginning of the year of 2022. So I think from listening to what Susan said, that it would allow us to shore everything up and make a complete decision regarding the fee and not split it up.
Okay. Are you going to put that in a motion to table?
Well,
Yes,
maybe the motion is to move the discussion to September then.
Yes. Table it at this point and bring it back up in September.
Okay.
I so move.
And I
Okay.
second.
Okay. A motion from Kyle and a second from Russ. Any more discussion? Okay. At this time, I'll ask everybody to vote.
Mr. Chair, it is unanimous in favor.
Okay, let the record show that this proposal was tabled and will be brought back up by unanimous vote. Okay. Agenda item I've been waiting on, number 8, the last one. Consideration of a fee increase for officials for the 21-22 school year or creation of a long-term plan for fee increase. Mr. Fitch?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a couple of things in this proposal. Number one is a fee increase for the 2023 school year, starting at that point. We'll discuss that first. One of the things that we heard loud and clear after the last round is that athletic directors and school administrators prefer a percentage as opposed to straight across the board. I understand that. I get that, especially when you get into the junior highs where you've got a lot more games, when you've got A, B, and sometimes C and D teams. So what we have done is we've taken a percentage and applied that all the way down the line. Now, how do we come up with that percentage? First thing, our starting point is I believe that anything less than a $5 increase for a varsity is pretty much a slap in the face to an official. How do you tell with a straight face to the official, well, we're going to give you a $2 increase for a varsity game? So we tried to find a percentage that gave a $5 increase for a varsity and then applied that all the way down. This was further supported by a little more work that we did, a little more study, looking at the TEA website. Now, we understand that officials are not the equivalent of teachers or coaches. Does not require college education, does not require teaching certification, but yet we are essential. You can't play the game without us. Looking at the TEA website, we found 2 other groups that probably fit that category, and that is custodial and security. They are essential, but they are not teachers. They're not school administrators. They don't require the education, nor are they responsible for the kids. And those categories are broken down into 2 levels, managerial and just regular workers. And we found that over the last 2 years, and the most recent data available, the average increase over a 2-year period was anywhere from 6.5% to 9%. So we're falling right within that. So we think that that further supports that. Now, as you go through the various sports, anytime we variated from the percentage increase, it's highlighted in orange, just so you can see that there is a little difference here. We believe that basketball sub-varsity needs to be broken down by the length of the quarter, and we scaled that back from our last proposal, but still it is based on the length of the quarter. Football, the only change that we made was to a sub-varsity football game that went with 12-minute quarters. We know that it should not get the same fee as a varsity game at 12-minute quarters, but there was too much of a gap in there, in our opinion. Soccer was straight across the board on the percentage. Softball, the only change that was made there was kind of a clarification. The way 1204 currently says is there is a varsity tournament fee, then there is a tournament sub-varsity fee, and then below that it says tournament no inning starts after 90 minutes. It did not specify whether it was varsity or sub-varsity. So it was being interpreted two different ways. Some people were saying, well, since it's underneath sub-varsity, it means that it's only sub-varsity. Other people said, well, it doesn't say, so it means it's both. So what we wanted to do is clarify that by creating a fee for a varsity tournament that has a time limit, and then clarify the bottom one that it is strictly just for sub-varsity. In volleyball, volleyball is the lowest paid of our sports. I don't know what the history is of that. What the volleyball board would like to do is to try to incrementally get closer to where the other sports are. So their fee increase for varsity is a little bit more than the $5. And we would take that across to finally get them up to speed. Water polo would not have an increase, obviously, because this would be their first year to have games. Now, to address the challenge to create a model and a policy for moving forward, that's the two right-hand columns. Those are, let's just say, projected at this time. So we're looking at not only the one we're proposing now, but 2 additional levels of pay increases down the road. This will give the athletic directors plenty of time to work on budgets, consider those budgets. So we think that that will be a good solution to this process. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I could ask one question, and it's the sport I'm probably most passionate about is basketball. Mike, what was the reasoning behind the regional semifinals and finals being the same amount?
Eddie, I believe that's the way it currently is. And so we didn't change that. We just upped the percentage.
Eddie, I think the reason is because we, up until this past year, because of COVID, that those games were those were regional tournament games. They were both the same site, back to back. In other words, it was 4 teams there. They played the semifinals on one day and the finals the next. So they had the same fee for that, quote, little tournament. Does that make sense?
It does, but I would like to hear from Dr. Elza. I'm hearing good reports on folks being able to play neutral sites, and I don't know if that's going to get any traction or not. If we go forward and play at different sites for semis and finals, would we need to revisit this?
Possibly. I mean, let me give an update on that. If y'all look at our calendar for next year, we've got the regional tournaments back on there. We are really hearing a lot from schools. Some schools, want to keep that regional tournament, obviously the state tournament, in the same format. The ones that are actually playing in the tournament are going, I love this format because our kids can recover and we can game plan better. We have time between contests. Russ just had a coach that came off soccer that just experienced that. So, I've just told people if they want to see that structure change, they're probably going to have to come to legislative council. So where we're at right now, we still have regional tournaments. We still have full state tournaments.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, as a matter of clarification, we're not asking the Sports Officials Committee to make an official vote on this. We know that we need to get to all the stakeholders and get a little more input from them. And our goal is to come back in September with firm amounts at each sport and each level that have been agreed to by all the stakeholders.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth, Mike, because I was just fixing to tell this committee that we won't be able to take any action, and I don't think we need to make a recommendation because there's a lot more. This is just kind of the precursor to what you're fixing to do as far as working with all the stakeholders. Am I correct?
It is a starting point. Yes, sir.
Right. So with that said, and I'm open to any more discussion, I think we just simply table this until September, and when you'll come back with a more concrete proposal. Are you okay with that, Mr. Fitch?
Yes, sir.
Committee members?
I'd just like to say thank you to Mike for all his work.
Yes. very much so. Okay, with that said, I'll take a motion to table this until our September meeting.
I'll make a motion that we table this fee increase until the September meeting. And then once we're done, I also like to make a comment as well.
Okay. I have a motion from Andre, a second from who?
Me, Bobby.
Okay, a second from Bobby Cruz. Okay, any more discussion, Andre?
Well, just even when we come back in September, just to make everybody aware, we all know what we're going through and what we're coming out of. And we still will not have firm numbers because we don't even know how many kids are going to be coming back to school at this point. And so I just want to make everybody aware that this may take a little longer than we want it to take. But I'm glad to see that we're ahead of it and we're working towards a solution. But just know y'all are going to have to work with us because, again, we have no clue about the number of kids that we're going to have coming back. And this is not going to only impact next year. This is going to impact the year after that, and years down the road as well.
Yes, I understand that. And I think, and I'm with the enrollment and number of kids in school, and that's how schools are funded. But one good thing about this proposal is this fee increase would not, we're looking at for school year 22-23, not this next school year. So we've got a year's cushion there, and you know, it may give us a little more time to see what the numbers look like. Any more discussion? Okay, I have a motion to table this proposal until our September meeting. At this time, I'll ask everyone to vote.
Mr. Chair, this is unanimous in favor.
Okay. The record show that the to table this proposal to the September meeting with a unanimous vote. Okay, that is all of the items on our agenda. At this time, I'll ask for any announcements, either from committee members or UIL staff.
Mr. Chair, could I have just a quick moment?
Sure.
And just bringing this up, this is just for awareness, and I think most of y'all are indeed aware of it. We are continuing, we're continuing to see across all sports. I mean, there's rules we don't like, right? There's rules that we wish the governing bodies had done differently, but I don't think we could get any group of officials or coaches to agree on what they should be. But the rules are what the rules are, and across all sports, I'm continuing to see issues with, and it's both sides, but coaches not wanting rules enforced and working to see that the officials that work their games or postseason neglect those rules or they won't choose them. And that strikes a little bit to me at the little bit of the integrity of what we're doing here. I wish all of our officials would just, if they all stood solid and say, that's the rules, we don't like it, we got to do it, that would help it. And for TASO, we have means by which is when we become aware of those officials that do neglect rules, we can work that. But I'm just asking for everybody, particularly this group here and you superintendents, and as you hear things and things come on, I just want you to know this, it's a problem and it's not going away. In baseball, we got 3 rules that are always a big issue. I wish they'd go away. The Federation hasn't, but I believe that's true in other sports as well.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. Any other comments or announcements?
Just want to say I appreciate Mike and all his work for what he's done and everyone on the committee. We've gone through some tumultuous times, but it just shows the strength of the UIL and the state of Texas and the officials, how we all have worked through this and navigated it together. So it's just a pleasure to be on this committee.
Thanks, Russ. And I second that comment.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
A couple comments, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I won't belabor it, guys. This has been the longest meeting in the history of SOC. But great topics, and it just shows the value of this committee. I know Dr. Harris is not on here still, so nobody can complain, accuse me of kissing up. But honestly, this was his brainchild. This was his vision, and it's really been one of the most influential committees that we can have, because you're putting school people and officials on the same committee, and we're making decisions on the behalf of both. So great job. Just about this school year in general, you got to know that we have great leaders at UIL, Dr. Harrison, Dr. Braddock, of course, leading us all. And we as athletics, we throw a lot of decisions at them, and sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. But the ultimate winners this year were our kids and our coaches and our schools. And I've said this, and y'all don't always get to hear us speak publicly, or you don't get to hear us speak deliberately to the ones that, that qualify for state. And I'm talking about officials too. But if our coaches and our schools would not have followed those protocols, we would not have had seasons. And if our officials would not have followed their protocols, plus put their health and safety on the line week in and week out to officiate our games 7 through 12, then we wouldn't have had seasons. And when we celebrate, we hope you're celebrating with us, because honestly, it was a group effort and we're very proud of it. Nobody at UIL takes ownership of it. We celebrate it with you, because we truly believe the people that delivered were you guys. I want to apologize a little bit. If we all think COVID's gone away, it hasn't. I have COVID right now, and I was a little probably not on my A game today. Y'all kept see Dr. Harrison correct me. I think he was probably going, why did I put her on this call? But I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's still a very real thing, and some of our schools are dealing with it. And as UIL makes decisions going into the fall, this will affect officials and it will affect schools. But our job is to hopefully get back to normal and to allow our schools the discretion on making those decisions as they deem appropriate for their individual school district. I think that becomes much easier, and I think that's what you guys will be able to see coming down the pike. Good meeting today. Appreciate all of y'all's work. I know we've got some tasks that you've given to us. I'll get some clarity on exactly, how we're supposed to do that with Dr. Harrison and Mr. Davis. I will reach back out to you, Mike. I'll keep you informed. David Allen, I'll keep you informed. I know we've got a couple that are on this call. Randy, you as well. I mean, I think it has to be collective to be successful, and we'll get all the right people lined up, and we'll take things forward that this committee will be proud of.
Thank you, Dr. Elsa. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I just want to tell everyone on the committee how much I appreciate the job you do, not only for our students, but for your staff and your officials organizations. Dr. Elsa, I wasn't going to bring it up because you told me yesterday about you having COVID, but I sure hope you get to feeling better, and appreciate you being a trooper. I'm
better than the COVID, and everybody on this call knows that, right?
But I appreciate you being a trooper and joining the meeting, because you're invaluable to this committee. Any other comments? Okay, with no other comments, we will adjourn this meeting at 11:20 a.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Great job, Dylan. I didn't give you a shout out. Great job.
Always, Dylan. I appreciate you.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Great job, guys.
Y'all have a great week. Call me if you need me.
Good job, Brian. See y'all.
All right. See you later.